I love classes where people teach stuff, but nobody is putting a dick in an ass in a class, you know?
Thank you for joining us for another episode of On the Horizon, a podcast about what's on the horizon for sex workers and how to navigate it. I'm Jessie Sage, and you can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual and at jessiesage.com.
And I am MelRose Michaels, and you can find me at MelRose Michaels on social and at melrosemichaels.com.
Also, just as a reminder, if you're joining the podcast on Apple, please leave us a 5-star rating and review us. It really helps us grow as a podcast and better share information from our guests to the sex work community as a whole.
Absolutely. And last but not least, if you want to support the podcast, please go to anchor.fm/horizon, spelled WHORIZON, to become a premium subscriber on the podcast, which unlocks you 2 bonus episodes each month on the 8th and 22nd between our regularly scheduled episodes. And we'll give you access to tons of exclusive footage of ourselves and our guests.
Who misses free and affordable ads and social networks without the anti-sex work rhetoric?
Assembly 4 is a team of sex workers and technologists from Melbourne, Australia, aiming to bring back free and fair advertising and social spaces to the sex work community.
They also give back to organizations based in harm reduction, sex work, and education.
Stepping away from the clunky design of traditional platforms, their 2 products, tris.link and switter.at, are refreshing and well-needed changes in both presentation and mission.
Both are free to join and open to all. In the words of an A4 user, from the policies to the language to the advice and tips, it makes such a big difference to feel encouraged and supported instead of policed.
Check out their website, assembly4.com, for the word, not the number, for more info.
All right, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about neurodiversity and disability in the sex work community. We have really great guests. We have Go Ask Alex, Body by Blunt, and Honey Daniels to talk to us about their experiences in the sex industry.
Yeah, this episode and talking to these guests was super, super enlightening. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that really came up for me was that, you know, when I'm running SexWorkCEO and I'm running these platforms, I am talking to sex workers and I'm giving advice on how to be more successful in sex work and to branch outside of, you know, just sex work and into mainstream. But I have never once addressed nor spoke to sex workers with disabilities.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And that was definitely brought to my attention this week. And, you know, it's just because
always learning though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think that's what's great about having guests on like this is like, it makes me better at the things I'm trying to accomplish for our space, which is so needed. The conversations are so needed.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting to me because I feel like, I am not disabled, but I have 2 kids who are, and I have a husband who was sick. And part of the reason that I've been in sex work is the same reason is a similar reason that a lot of people have been in sex work, which is that like conventional employment just wasn't going to work for me. And it wasn't going to work for me because I had 2 kids that I really needed to be there for. I had a husband that really needed me to be there for him. And there just wasn't resources to care for them in the way that they needed to be cared for. So one of my kids is out of the house now, but the other one is little still. And especially during the pandemic, like I'm not actually sure what we would have done. Like there were no schools that were open for him. He went to 5 different schools before somebody would take him. Wow. He's autistic, and he's nonverbal autistic. And there was just, because school was so many schools were closed, and because he's nonverbal, he can't do, virtual school. There just weren't options for him. And the fact that like I can do work from home, I can work on a really flexible schedule, like honestly, I have no idea like how we could have possibly like survived if I wasn't in sex work. And I feel like a lot of sex workers are coming in because they also can't work conventional jobs because either like me, they're caretakers, or they have disabilities, or they're neurodivergent. And so the workforce isn't set up for them, or, you know, all sorts of reasons. And so I feel like even though like people with disabilities are like so overrepresented in sex work, it's not something that gets like as much attention as it should get.
I agree. And I think that this episode will at least highlight that and educate on that, because if you aren't neurodivergent or you don't have a disability, you are living life through this very narrow view that you're not considering, especially if your disability isn't outward and on display, which is something like Go Ask Alex really talks about, which it has a whole nother facet associated with it. So I think this will be enlightening, to say the least, and extremely educational.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I think came up too is the fact that like many of our clients and our fans and the people who buy our content are also have disabilities, and being like represented by the performers that they're watching, by the sex workers that they hire, I think is really, it's important to recognize that there are disabled sex workers. It's also important to recognize that our fans and clients are represented by a lot of disabled people. And so I feel like taking disability into consideration whenever let me say it this way more directly. We can't talk about sex work without talking about disability.
Yeah.
Disability issues are sex worker issues. And vice versa. And I think that it's really, really important to recognize that.
Absolutely.
You want to just dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go. Go Ask Alex is an adult model, on-screen performer, and sex educator with the distinction of being the industry's first ever ostomate since receiving a life-changing surgery in 2019. The auburn-haired Canada native has since taken the opportunity to use her high-profile platform to advocate for disabled and underrepresented bodies in adult media. Welcome, Go Ask Alex. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm tired. I am working all the time, but other than that, I'm good.
I saw
just slugging through.
You just had an article come out. Yeah, tell us a little. Well, actually, introduce yourself to our audience, and then tell us a little bit about the article you just wrote.
Yeah, definitely. I'll do that. I'm Go Ask Alex. I'm Alex. I'm an adult performer, and I'm also an advocate for the representation of disabled bodies in pornography and in media. As I have a disability, I have an ileostomy, which is a permanent medical device. And my passion is speaking about and working to promote, like I said, that representation of underrepresented bodies in pornography. So that's who I am. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, and you you got an ostomy while you were working full time.
That's correct. Yeah, I was a sex worker for about 6 years prior to having the colectomy surgery that really changed my life, and that ended with me having an ileostomy, the ostomy you were talking about. So I have experience in sex work pre-disability and also post-disability, and I've kind of seen the differences in that. So
yeah. So tell us a little bit about the article you just wrote.
Yes. Just to clarify, you mean for Lust Scene?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just published on Lust Scene. That's a publication run by Erica Lust. And for that piece, I wrote about my experience with sex education, or I would probably rather say the lack of sex education for people like myself who are coming out of surgery and transitioning to life with a new disability or medical device, and really how disappointing it was to be handed that brochure with really no information on like practical sex education or advice. So I wrote a little bit about what it was like for me to, on my own, discover my new sexuality and my new body, and what I wish had been provided for me at the hospital.
Yeah, I thought that was really powerful. I read the piece, and one of the things that I personally resonated with, because of watching my partner go through this, is how, or something, not the same thing as you, but going through an illness and having it impact sexuality, is how little doctors were actually concerned about your sex life post that. They're like, you're still alive. That's great. And you're like, yeah, but
what next? Yeah.
I still need to live in this body that's been very much impacted by this. And, I thought it was interesting. You were talking about how the placement of an ostomy may impact things I hadn't even thought about, even though I know you, I hadn't thought if it's lower, like, is it impacting like access to your genitals? Like
Yeah.
things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is something that I wasn't really able to consider. I mean, you go into an experience like this in such a state of emergency and fear when you're going through like a big medical change, like you said, and of course, it's something that is important to you, but in the moment, you might not be thinking to advocate for yourself because you just don't know.
Yeah.
And you're just doing what you can to survive. And then as you're recovering from that, like you said, the doctors are just happy that you're alive and you're kind of expected to just figure it out. And even in these brochures they give out that has a little section about, sexuality and intimacy after surgery, there isn't really any information aside from a recommendation to ask your doctor or nurse if you have questions. And, some encouraging statements like you can still have a healthy relationships and intimacy and don't, wait as long as you need before you are intimate again. But it's like there's no actual practical information about that.
Right. Of like, what exactly does that look like, and how do I do that?
And what are the sexual implications of the surgery or the procedure or the device that I have, like the placement of the ostomy, like you said. So,
do you feel
those are really important
with a major medical change like that the focus is so much on like keeping their patient alive that doctors might overlook quality of life like after the fact?
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. I think that especially the way our hospitals are set up and medicine is set up, you're really in and out. And the focus is really on efficiency rather than having that that patient care. But even in situations where you have doctors with great bedside manner, like I had a great surgeon, he was very busy, so I couldn't see him very much, but he was a wonderful doctor. I don't think that the doctors, at least in my case, really wanted to have that conversation. I don't think anybody was really volunteering to have an awkward conversation about sexuality and what that would actually look like and be like. And even when I did advocate for myself and bring that up or ask questions to my doctor, it was definitely awkward. It didn't seem like he'd been asked those questions before. And that's unfortunate because, you're not going to want to ask more questions in that situation, right?
It's so shocking.
It's so interesting, like the way that when you actually, like when you're a performer, when you use your body for your job and you use your body like in a sexual way for your job, how important these things are and how like people don't, like the medical doctors aren't, like it's not even on their radar. Like I know for like our situation, like, when my partner had testicular cancer and had like surgery after that to like remove the tumor, like one of the side effects of that was that he can't like externally ejaculate anymore. And we did a lot of porn and I had a lot of people who like were buying our customs and was like, well, I don't understand what happened. Like I wanted a cream pie. And I was like, well, you don't get a cream pie. Like, I'm sorry. Like that's not possible anymore. And when he would go to the, and he's like completely like just phased out of creating content. And part of it is this like, I can't meet the expectations of like a male bodied person, like after my surgery. And it's interesting because when he went to the doctor and was like, how do I get this back? Like, what could I do? They're like, if you want to have another baby, we could just like extract your semen. He's like, I don't want a baby. This is not a problem. That they're just like medicalizing it. And they're like, well, that's what you need semen for. And he's like, okay, but like, what if I just want it? Like, that's not a problem. That's not a medical problem.
That's out of my scope. I can't help you with that.
I guess one of the things that I'm thinking about as you're talking is that it's about like sex education and what they provide to you, like when you go through something that's like super transformative like that. But it's also about like, how do we change the system so that we can like have the kind of conversations that we need to have for our own well-being? Yeah,
definitely. And to make it the norm, like to have sex positivity as part of our our medicine and like obviously as everywhere in our society, but especially with our doctors and our medicine in the places where we're the most vulnerable. Knowing that it's a conversation you can have and that it's a priority, because it's still so taboo, I guess, in a way. And that's so limiting, and it leaves so many people with unanswered questions that can lead to, a lot of physical problems, but as well as like mental health issues, because you're dealing with this and you have no idea what to do. You don't know. There's no one you can talk to. Like there's no. It's really difficult.
You come from such a unique position because you came from doing sex work before this, and then going through the surgery and changing your body this way. So like, what is that experience like to have to like relearn, and like, your business has changed, your life has changed. What is that like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's been a learning curve, and it's still hard. It's still really hard performing, getting naked. I still have a lot of insecurity. Like, I don't think that's ever going to go away. I look at the way my body used to look, and, I feel envy for that. And that's just, I think, going to be part of my life. And so when I'm performing, I do try to find underwear and lingerie and things like that will maybe not hide my medical device, but just that makes me feel, more comfortable. Yeah. And also different positions that I can be in where I can not really have it front and center, but it's something that's always sort of in the back of my mind. And for other people who are my fans, they might say they don't even notice it, or it's not like, it's just there and it's not positive or negative. It's just there. And it doesn't matter. And that is what I want. That is like my goal. But, of course it's always like mentally, it's always there for me. It's like the thing that you're most insecure about on your body, but it's right there on camera and you can't hide it. Yeah. So, that is difficult. It definitely, it impacts me in that way.
Yeah. I mean, I was telling MelRose about the calendar project that we've done, if you want to talk a little bit about that, but that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd love to. So for 2 years, I called it the Disabled Sex Workers Calendar. And it was a art project that was art and advocacy that was born from just my experience of realizing that there are so many sex workers with disabilities, chronic illness, mental health, like that our industry is saturated with people who have these conditions. And the representation of that is very low in comparison to how many people are living with these things. So I decided I would make this art project and this advocacy project where I would feature, my goal was 12 different performers in a 12-month calendar, and they would have boudoir photos or artistic nudes, and essentially just I would showcase these different body types and maybe a quote from each person in their social media to funnel and push new fans towards their work and obviously give them a platform, but also just to make people think a little bit about their preconceived notions about conventional beauty and sex work, and sort of to spark the idea that people with disabilities still have sex, still have pleasure, can still be sexy.
The thing I think is so like cool about that is that like when you think of like a calendar, like a fireman's calendar, or like whatever, like all these different calendars, they're supposed to be sexy. Like it's baked into the idea of it is like, these are 12 sexy firefighters, or these are 12 sexy bikini models or whatever. So like to do it in that format is to be like, no, these are 12 sexy people.
Exactly. And I mean, you the 12 sexy firefighters calendar, I mean, I haven't probably seen one of those in like a decade. Yeah. My aunt used to buy them. That's all I know. My aunt always had one. But I haven't seen one in a long time, but there's sort of like a certain narrative of the kind of firefighter who's going to be in that. And he's going to be tall, and he's going to be really fit. He's not going to be fat. He's not going to be hairy. He's not going to have a physical disability. Right. Like he's gonna look a certain way. Yeah. And he's gonna, and he's gonna be cisgendered. And it's like there are all these assumptions about what sexy is and what's hot. And like same thing with most, adult magazines or calendars or, what is it? Centerfold. There's like a certain type of body that you expect to see, and usually white as well. And like there is some like racial diversity, but overwhelmingly it's like white, thin women, white, thin, cis women, right, who are able-bodied. And so to sort of flip the narrative on that and to showcase sexiness and like a diverse sexiness and a realistic sexiness, because most of us don't look like those firefighters,
right?
Yeah,
I love that. Are you not doing it anymore?
I wanted to do it this year, but I have been just so overwhelmed. I have been active in the Fairy Creek blockade that's happening here in British Columbia, which is basically like a protest, an ongoing blockade to protect old growth forests that are at risk of deforestation and clear cutting. So I've been involved in that and sort of on the front lines there as much as I could during the summer. Obviously haven't been there as much in the winter because health problems, and it's a very intense, it's a very intense environment. And I'm raising a puppy who is now 8 months old, and I am in agility with her like 3 times a week and like dog obedience classes and recall workshops. And like, I chose the most puppy that just needs so much from me.
Is she training you or are you training her?
Oh my gosh. Like, I don't even know. She's draining my wallet. She's a border collie, pure border collie.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I really made a decision there. I really chose that. So
I chose that for myself.
I chose that for myself. I have no one to blame but myself. I love her. She's so cute. But yeah, she doesn't stop. So that's kind of my main focus. And I am doing other advocacy work. I'm trying to do as much writing as I can, but also dealing with my own health, which I'm dealing with some other health problems and seeing specialists and getting diagnosed and getting some answers there. So that's kind of my focus right now, especially because as much as I loved doing the calendar and I do want to do it again, hopefully next year, it takes up a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of resources, and I make $0 from it. And I end up donating all of the profits. And if there aren't enough profits, I just donate, my own money in lieu of the profits because I still want to be able to make a donation. So yeah, it's definitely a passion project. And I think it has started some good conversations, and I do want to do it again, but maybe in partnership with someone who could help me with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, it's on the topic of writing. If you ever want to come write for our platform, SexWorkCEO, where we host a podcast that this episode will be airing on, you're more than welcome to write for us. We would love.
I would love to. I would love to.
For sure, some new lenses.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, I would love to do that.
Awesome.
Is there anything that you feel like we didn't ask you about that was relevant to this conversation?
No, I mean, I can't think of anything now. I'll probably think of something as soon as we turn off the camera, because that's always how it goes. But if there's anything else you want to talk about, I still have a few minutes. Or
I think it's good.
Yeah, we have a lot of good stuff.
I like that we ended on puppy.
I know.
Oh, yes. I know. I'm sorry. She isn't here to show you. She's so kissy and like, she would just be jumping up. And I'll send you a photo. I'll send you a photo and email.
Yeah. So where can people find you?
So my website is goaskalex.com. That was expensive domain, so please check it out. And my OnlyFans is onlyfans.com/goaskalex. As long as we're still on the OnlyFans platform, as long as we're still allowed to be, I'll be there. Then social media is Go Ask Alex Online, and that's on Instagram and Twitter. You can find me there.
Perfect. Great. It was so nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it's nice meeting you.
It was so good to catch up with you. I mean, sort of, but it's nice to meet you, and I hope we can catch up
And if people
sometime.
want to see Alex and I go to the prom?
Yes, if you want to see us go to, we didn't really end up going to the prom. We had our own party, didn't we? Yeah.
That's so fun.
Yeah, we had more fun in the hotel room.
We had way more fun. Yeah. While PJ fiddled with the lights and sound for an hour.
Anyone who knows PJ is going to be like, yes, that's what happened.
PJ is the reason this podcast looks so much better the second half of the season for those listening.
Yeah. There was about 10 minutes of filming and about an hour of moving the soft boxes around.
You're like perched up on the counter. You're like, wait, how long do I have to sit in this position? And he's like, oh,
yeah, I'm like, my tailbone. But it was great. It was worth it.
Fun, yeah.
It looks great.
It looks well lit.
It looks very well lit. I will say that. It looks very well lit. Good job.
All right. Well, it was fun to talk to you.
Yeah.
Yes, hopefully we can meet in person and catch up soon.
Yep, sounds great. Body by Blunts is a performer and advocate from Dallas, Texas. They were featured last year in Hustler magazine highlighting disabled sex workers and included in Go Ask Alex's Disabled Sex Worker Calendar for the month of April. They believe in decriminalization, bottom-up support, and that sex workers' lives are important and their voices should always be amplified.
Welcome to the show, Body by Blunts. It's nice to finally meet you. Personally, I know you met Jessie before, but it's great to have you on. For the people who are viewing or listening into this who might be less familiar, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Body by Blunts, and you can call me any of them. Body, Mix, Blunts, if you're nasty. I use they, them pronouns. I am an activist and a sex worker and have been for over 10 years. Emphasis on the sex worker part. I'm a disabled sex worker and neurodivergent, and it's very important to me to live in these spaces with lots of folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we've been talking about over the taping of this show is how interconnected like disability and neurodivergence and sex work is. Yeah. And I was wondering if you wanted to like speak a little bit to that, because obviously, I mean, obvious to us because we're within like sex work, like folks with disabilities and neurodivergencies are totally overrepresented in sex work, as opposed to straight jobs. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about that and why that would be the case?
Sure. Yeah. When I first started out doing sex work, it was definitely 100% a survival thing. I needed to get out of a bad situation. But later on, when I still needed an income that would work with what I had going on, trying to manage your day, especially being neurodivergent and trying to do other jobs is not always possible, especially if you don't have access to healthcare or mental health care. Mm-hmm. There's certain things that you're just not going to be able to find as simplistic as somebody who wasn't neurodivergent or wasn't disabled. Mm-hmm. And what sex work offered for me personally was a means in which to make money without having to compromise my boundaries on my own like medical needs at the time. Mm-hmm. And especially so now.
Yeah. Is it like because it's flexible and you can do it when you are able to do it around your sort of medical needs? Is that what you mean by that?
Absolutely. Yeah. The flexibility of sex work in all forms or facets, because you're running a small business and that business is you. If you're not feeling well, if you're having a flare, if you have had a migraine for a whole day, in any other type of job situation, you would have to ask permission to take time off, hope that you have sick time, possibly lose a gig job if that's what kind of work you're doing is gig work, and possibly strain or lose a relationship because of it or cost you money down the way. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not to say that won't ever happen with sex work and having obligations that you can't meet, but it allows you a gateway. Well, if this place isn't working, I'm going to try this other avenue. So you have options within the same professional set of jobs, of occupations.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah. How do you think that it's like different for folks with like physical disabilities within sex work as opposed to like neurodivergencies or mental health issues or the other sorts of reasons that this flexible employment is desirable?
I'm a person who uses a mobility device to get around. I use a rollator, which is basically like a walker with wheels on it. It's got like a seat, and I use that or a cane to get around. That's what I use to move around in the world. Now, when you're trying to get employment, it's it's almost like it doesn't matter what you did prior if you're overqualified, if you're exactly qualified. They see that mobility device, and though by Title IX rules, they can't discriminate against you directly, but they could just not give you the job for no reason. That's a thing that they can do. And being disabled and discriminated against, it's hard to prove, especially in a state where I live. Like Texas is an at-will fire state. If they feel like you are taking up too much of their labor or time because you're calling out for a flare or something like that, they'll just cut you, period.
I think Pennsylvania is too.
Yeah. Something that stands out about that to me is we had this conversation similarly on another one of our episodes where it came to the labor force, where it's like, yeah, technically by legal standards, you can't discriminate against me or for any reason, essentially, but it still happens. And that was in regard to like race and gender, of course. But the fact that it happens in terms of, health reasons, especially if you have a very visible disability, I don't think people understand that. Because they just assume you can't be discriminated against because it's not allowed. Whereas like, well, people could just not say why they're doing it and it still happens. Right. So I feel like that's very overlooked. So I'm glad we're highlighting that for sure.
Yeah, I think you have to be a very privileged person to say, well, there's laws against that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean jack shit when somebody like just doesn't want to offer you a job. Yeah.
Exactly, because those people just need to write you a check at that point. It's just like, write me a check. Don't tell me something like that. Like, it's not helpful or kind to me. Write me a check.
Yeah, I remember, this is a different situation, but when I first moved to Pennsylvania, I was looking for a job. This was years ago, 15 years ago, and I had 2 little kids at the time. And I went into a job interview at a bank, and the person who was interviewing me said, do you have kids? And I said, yes. And he said, well, this is a very demanding job. I don't think a mom would be able to do this. And he didn't give me the job. And I left and I went home and I told my husband at the time that he had said that and some other people. And they were like, well, he can't do that. That's illegal. Yeah. And I was like, he just did it.
Yeah. It happened.
So, it doesn't matter if he's not allowed to ask. He did. And I don't have a job. So the fact that he's not allowed to do that doesn't change anything. Like I still don't have a job. So
exactly. And it's like, would you want it after that? It's like, no, why would I want to work for this person who clearly wanted to manipulate me into not taking it in the first place?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's like, despite like any sort of like anti-discrimination laws, there's obviously still those there's what we have on paper, and then there's the reality of like people's lived experiences. And I think one of the things that you brought up, in sex work, you don't have a boss. Like you don't ask anyone to take time off. You just don't work if you don't want to, or you can't, or whatever.
With when you're disabled, or especially visibly disabled, you either have to make a choice. You have to decide, I am going to allow my mobility devices to be in the content that I shoot, or I'm going to try to hide it. And honestly, I understand both sides. There's no wrong answer to that. It's about whatever work you're trying to do and what's going to keep you safe. And currently in my life, it's okay for me to be out as disabled, whereas previously it wasn't safe for me to say that kind of thing on the internet anywhere, because I don't know who would take advantage of that and take advantage of me and put me in harm's way. But even for people who are trying to help disabled performers and content creators, honestly, making more opportunities for us to shoot, because everybody that we see reflected back is, they look the same, or they definitely don't have mobility devices or something that would, they can quote unquote, the idea of passing or not passing, etc. Like if I walk down the street, people know I'm disabled and I don't have a choice about that thing. That's going to happen. And whereas someone who might have an invisible disorder or something that is hidden under clothing, or is a mental health. Exactly. And then how do you navigate that? And it's just the different layers of privilege as that works, especially in a business like we're in, where we're visually people want something to grab onto. And though I've made the choice to be okay if my mobility devices are in or around places, I have to try hard not to make that another point of fetishization for other people too. Yeah. Because sometimes, like when you go to like any of the porn clip sites, like the ethical porn clip sites, and type in the word disabled, you might find some disabled performers, but you might also find people that are fetishizing it for dollar amounts because there are people looking for a particular kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting too. The part that you said about like platforms and like kind of things on platforms and how you don't see these disabled sex workers aren't the people that we see. Like I've never ever gone to a platform's homepage and seen a visible like disabled sex worker as like front and center, you know, like, and that's a problem in many segments of sex work for many communities and marginalized people, but that disabled and like I'm trying to think of my own personal, you know, small experience, but like I've never gone to a platform's homepage and visibly seen a disabled sex worker. Like why has that not happened? That's
I think of that often when people are saying like, oh well, BBWs or like whatever these categories are like the top search terms, as if that means that like those people are getting like a lot of traffic. And I'm like, well, yeah, they're searched more because they're not there. Like, you know, you don't like go in and search like thin white woman because
we're right there.
Because they're there, you know? And so I think that like that often gets the stories about these things, often the way that they're told,
it's a perspective.
It obscures like what's actually going on, which is that like these are identities that are hidden, that are not platformed.
And we talk about like, and like the bigger discussion about like meta tags and category tags and how they work. And like, you can tell how great your privilege is by how little tags that you might be under, kind of thing. And it's like, I'm several, and it just makes me feel some kind of way because it's if I don't use the tags that they want me to use, no one will find me. If I do, now I've given in to their tagging system because this is what I must do.
Right. Yeah. And if you're so many, then it becomes, you know, in mini vids, for example, you can only pick 5 things. So what if you pick Black and disabled and like, you know, and you go down and now you're like, wait, but the content itself, I don't have any more tags left.
To describe what's actually taking place.
When it should be action-based or performer-based tags, those totally make sense to me. Like if you're looking for a particular performer, fine. You know, that makes total sense. Like people work really hard on their online like social media game, and it makes sense to like have their name as a meta tag that should be able to be easily found. And then after that, activity would make the next most sense, or what type of scene, like, but not necessarily somebody's race as the descriptor for what kind of scene it is, or ooh, we're having a disabled gangbang. It's like no one wants to see the words disabled gangbang. They're just like, ooh, Body by Blunts is doing a gangbang. Awesome. I would like to watch that. Like that's a very different optics conversation.
Right. That's all like I think that's all like very complicated.
It's very complicated too, but then also like I had this discussion with a DMCA company because we were talking about the removal of pirated content. And I was talking about like how my logic when I was younger and when I first got into adult was very much like everything's stolen, it's free advertising, it's watermarked. Like I can't really stop it. So I'm just going to make the best of this situation in my small young brain. But then what they told me was that like, you got to realize you're being reduced to however people want to label you in your content. They're not putting MelRose Michaels doing X. They're putting redhead, white girl, big boobs, like whatever the thing is. And I was like, oh, that's right. So it's not branding me. It's not advertising. Like it's just pirated content. Like, so when you really think about what's happening, it's like, oh, okay, major paradigm shift. Got it. That's losing half my business to piracy. Understood. Yeah.
So actually, like, I want to talk about like mobility devices. And you said that now you're in a place in which you like feel comfortable, both being like, talking about, how that impacts you in your life, but also like showing that in your work. Do you, how have like people responded to that?
The people that were already kind of like, I don't have a big following, you know, I don't consider myself somebody necessarily on the internet, but the people who have been following my content, some of them went away, but some of them stayed and they were appreciative. And then new people who heard about me through other things were like, oh, I heard that you're a disabled sex worker and I'm also disabled and I want to see other hot disabled people fucking. And I'm like, I would too. Right to your local senator. Like, I don't.
That's great.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I feel like there's, that's one of the like beautiful things that I think about indie porn that like is that people can see people like themselves.
Yes.
You know, like you were saying that your fans be like, I want to see more disabled people who like maybe look like me or have things going on like me, who have a sex life that looks exciting that I want to watch, you know, that I want to also have in my life. And, you know, it's frustrating that like, it's so hard to like, so much harder to like build a following and find and get your stuff out so that the people who want to see that can see it. But yeah, I don't know. Like, do you feel like yeah, I mean, it sounds like the fan base that you've built has been like really supportive and that's been
rooted in you.
Yeah, it's really nice because like we all have like career goals or like things that we want to do like in our career. And like for me, they're like something I've been dreaming about since I was like 13, but it's not like something I have to do or I'll go in the ground unhappy or something. You know, it's nice to be able to be more of myself a little bit and less relying on like, because when you're doing other kinds of sex work, you're so pigeonholed to a persona that you have to stick to. And if you change or shimmy one way or the other, you could lose everything very quickly. It's a very fragile ecosystem. And going to something like, because now all I do is filming where it's not such a fragile ecosystem. And I have more freedom to wear things that I might like, especially doing photo shoots. I actually have more creative control. I get something that looks more like myself in my own brain and not necessarily trying to tailor myself to a specific demographic of people.
Yeah. Do you feel like, how has sex work, how has it, impacted your relationship to your own body?
Honestly, in the beginning, I was so young. I was in my teens. And, you know, when you're in your late teens to early 20s, the feelings we have about ourselves, especially being around other people that are also in that same age group, I still am super introverted, and I came from, having 3 friends in high school, and I didn't, I just wanted to make friends and, do that kind of thing. And I didn't really know what to make of how my body was changing at that point. But I didn't know how to I didn't know enough about myself to really take the pictures I wanted to take or film the way I wanted to film or cam the way I really wanted to. Because I was so concerned about hiding aspects of my body that I thought other people wouldn't like. Not that I didn't like, but because I wanted to make this a situation like, oh, I'm going to hide this here and hide that there. And oh no, what if they realize this boob is bigger than that boob? I need to like kind of slightly turn and then, that kind of thing. Like I've contrived my own like being, and for what? And as I got older and continued doing more work on myself and self-inventory, I realized that I didn't give a fuck about it anymore. And that I really did. I was like, I have a hot body. I don't know why I'm hiding it for these people who are barely entertained anyway.
You do have a hot body. I remember you sending pictures.
Thank you.
Anyways, it was really, really fun to talk to you. Where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter, and that's BodyXBlunts for my not safe for work Twitter, or Body by Blunts for my safe for work Twitter.
That is clever.
Very clever.
Thank you.
I like your marketing. See what's going on there.
I thought of it all by myself.
It's good.
Yeah,
It's
you
good.
crushed it. Very good.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It was so nice to meet you and nice to see you again, Jessie.
Honey Daniels is a 29-year-old autistic disabled femme. They work as a professional submissive for hire and run a fetish print shop called Slug Baby Wears. Welcome, Honey, to the podcast. We're super excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here.
So the last time I saw you, PJ spanked you for a fair amount of time, and then you taught me how to use a Hitachi,
And you didn't
which I
like
had never
it.
done. And I've never done again.
Did it catch fire? Because I've heard so many horror stories about Hitachis catching fire.
I know so many people that has happened to, but it did not catch fire. It just
No, nothing was fire. I was just like, why do people like this? And I tried so hard to like it. And I was like, I don't get it. My brain can't process this. And then I was like, I think I had an orgasm.
But did I?
Because like my body's contracting, but I don't know that I like it.
yeah, sometimes it happens so fast because your body's like, oh, there's more stimulation. I gotta keep going.
Yeah. But I was like, wait, that was an involuntary orgasm.
But to be honest though, for me, I like if I can't calm in 30 seconds, sometimes I like don't want to do it.
I know.
So-
I was trying to do. Like, let's get on with this.
It's like I need just like a splash of dopamine, and then I need to continue on with my day.
But for the Hitachi, if you're not paying close attention, like you will miss it. Like,
Absolutely.
like, wait a minute.
And if you don't want to come in 30 seconds, you have to be on it. You know, like, because 1 second too long, you're like, goddamn.
Yeah, it got me.
Because we were at AVN and we were like, let's make some clips. Let's make some like fetish clips. So we did like a spanky one, and then I was like, I've never used a Hitachi. And Honey's like, really?
Blew my
We
mind.
have to do this. And then I was like, okay, let's go. And then like the video's on and I'm trying to like, and I'm
The
like,
first time was on camera?
oh yeah. It's on mini vids for anyone who wants to see this.
I'm going to buy that clip later.
And I was like, yeah, I think I like this. No, I don't think I like this. And then we finished in the camera, scene over. And then Honey's like, that was the most wholesome scene that I've ever
It really was, because we were just like shooting the shit before we even got to it.
chatting. I'm like lying down. Honey's like between my legs with the wand, and it was like, now here? And I was like,
That's great.
Anyways, for people who want to see this, it's on mini vids. But for people who want to know about you,
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh man. What autism and trying to talk about yourself. I am 29. I live in Pennsylvania. I've been a sex worker for 9 years, which when I think about that, holy frick.
It's a long time, yeah.
It's so long. And I mean, I've done
an old timer in this industry because people like disappear so fast.
Yeah.
They do. And I feel like people also like, they're like, oh, I'm done with camming, therefore I'm done with sex work forever. And I was done with camming, but I was like, this is my job. I'm going to figure out what I'm doing. So I was a cam model for 5 years, which in cam modeling is also a long time to stick around. That was very fun. I am just too autistic for that. Like it requires so much. I have been doing professional sub work and girlfriend experience type stuff, which like I don't really like that word. I don't really like that term because I think it has like a connotation attached to it. But I'm a girlfriend for hire.
Tell us a little bit about like
Professional sub.
Yeah, so I want to hear about why like autism like is why it's easier for you to do your job as an in-person worker. I mean, it is for me as well. So I'm curious why you think that. But I first want to know about like professional submission? Because we've never talked to somebody.
I don't really know that many people either, unless they're working in like established dungeons and they're like a house sub, which is not what I do. Basically as a professional submissive, because I mean, we all know there are professional dominants like everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is not me. I am not a dominant person. Like I am a sub bottom, like to my core. And I think there's a lot of people, especially with wanting to take on a dominant role, people who have never participated in kink or people who have never like had a solid play partner or something, you know. Kink is one of those things that you can't just read a book, you can't just do research and you're good at it. It's a hands-on thing. You have to be in the, so as a professional submissive, I essentially offer my services to people that either want more experience topping, dominating people who want like a very specific scene that maybe they don't have a play partner to fulfill. I view it as a bit of like hands-on teaching. Not everybody has the opportunity to meet somebody and just be like, okay, well, can we try this? Can we do this? And some things, like I said, I think they take practice. So I offer myself as a person who is open to ideas, open to doing things. I obviously have my boundaries that I keep. But it can be, I think, especially for like domination, it can be very scary for people to step into that role because there's so many societal ideas that the things you want in that role are bad, mean, abusive. And so I think it's helpful to give people a frame of mind where it's like, I like this stuff. And if you want to try it out, I'm somebody who enjoys it. You do not have to worry that I'm faking doing this for you, or that I'm going to call you the next day and be like, you know what? I actually was really uncomfortable with that. You know, because I have a situation where I'm very easily able to set boundaries. I don't put myself in situations where those boundaries are easily crossed. And I just like, it's fun. I think it's fun because if you want to sub for somebody, there's so many opportunities. But if you're looking for more experience topping a person, like there's not as many people out there offering that service.
So tell us a little bit about like, so you brought this up, the fact that like you have disabilities, like how has this impacted your work and how does it,
and how does like sex work lend itself to being a disabled person?
So it's funny because I feel like the way it lends itself are also the ways that are difficult.
Interesting.
Obviously, it lends itself to being disabled. I make my own schedule. I decide all of that. And people love to say that in sex work, like, oh, so freeing, you're your own boss and all that. But I don't think people really understand what being your own boss entails. It actually is a lot of work. If I don't work that day, if I don't feel up to it, there's nobody else making the money. Like that's it. And with disability, that's very hard because there are obviously days that I can't push through. I can't show up. And that can be really hard in this industry because there's so much emphasis on like, just work harder, just show up, just be doing it. And it's like, well, there are so many of us that can't. Like that, like hard stop can't.
I see threads of people like established sex workers giving advice to like newbies, and they're saying like, that's how I feel about it, because they're saying like, you need to set a schedule, you need to be consistent, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I'm like, actually, like I'm not disabled, but I got into this industry because I'm a mom of 3 kids. I have a lot of things going on. Like I can't work all the time. If I could work all the time, I would have a job where I'd
have a salaried job. Like,
right. I would have some benefits and I wouldn't deal with all of this like whorephobic bullshit, you know, but like, that's not the world that I live in. So,
but I'm on that flip side of that where I'm like, I approach it very much like that. Like I approach it my sex work because I'm digital, but I am very structured and I'm very like, I treat it like a corporation, and that's how I've succeeded. But to your life, it's like it's how sex work serves you as opposed to, you know.
And I think that it's like good if you could do that, that's awesome. But I think there are a lot of people for whom like the reason they're in sex work
is not that
is
reason.
because they can't do that.
Yeah,
exactly. And I feel like those threads where people are, even the engagement groups or the groups that you pay to get advice for stuff.
Yeah.
I personally feel like it's a little predatory because what works for you, and I have been hearing this since I started sex work. It's completely insane to me that 9 years later, it's still the commentary. But it's like what works for you is never going to work for somebody else.
Right.
And what works for you is like 50% luck.
Yeah.
And people making money, good money, they never want to admit that. They never want to admit that sometimes it's pure freaking luck. You just happen to be online at this time. You just happen to be the tweet that somebody scrolled past. And people want to act like that luck is based on their hard work, which then is sort of like a dig at people like me who I am working to my absolute hardest.
Yeah.
But I'm not an able-bodied neurotypical person. So like what you view as work harder, set a schedule, do all this, like that is actually inaccessible to me.
Yeah.
It's like somebody telling someone in a wheelchair, like, oh, there are only 3 steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm like, cool. I still can't walk up them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I definitely experienced that in in-person work where people are seeing neurotypical, able-bodied people and they have an idea of how this is going to go. And that doesn't work for me. Online work did work for me for a while, but it sort of shifted into this thing where you have to be working 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like that when I first started.
I came from CAM as well. And for me, I'm hyper competitive. Like I overwork to the core. That's my identity. But when I was in CAM, especially, it was so competitive that I felt I self-isolated. I got very depressed, developed a lot of disordered behavior. But a lot of it was like, if I'm not online all the time, someone else is making the money they would be tipping me. And it's just this endless rat race of like, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. I should be online. Why aren't I online? And
because people put that out there that like, I'm successful because I'm working. And so it makes everybody else feel like, oh, well, I'm not successful. I need to be working harder. I need to be doing more. And that is just going to lead everybody to burnout.
I was wondering that because me and Jessie were talking before we got on for the podcast too. And I was like, I wonder, because it's so interesting. You went from digital to full service. Like having autism, how do those social interactions, like how does that change? Because I'm so curious.
So hard.
Online, it's so like, it's such a different animal being online than being in person.
Yeah.
It's true. I feel like there are pros and cons. The interaction from going online to full service, it honestly isn't that different for me, because one thing about me is, I don't like a lot of my persona. A lot of that is actually me, because I'm not that good at masking. I am not that good at lying. Oh my gosh, I totally just admire people that create an entirely fake persona.
Yeah.
I'm like incapable of doing that. I can't do it at all.
I tried. I'm sweeter. People think I'm so sweet. I'm like, I got you a Volt.
So like so much of who I was on cam was actually me just being me. And I kind of just shift that into in-person work where like, and I really try to be authentic in interactions and the way I brand myself, because I never want someone to meet me and be like, you are weird. You are a weird person. So I kind of just try to like let my freak flag fly. And I'm very open about being autistic and being disabled because I want people to be comfortable around that when I show up with my cane, which I have other providers that are like, you bring your cane to appointments? I'm like, yeah, because I needed to walk. Like,
how do you think I get there?
And don't get me wrong, there was a long time I wouldn't use the cane because I was like, I don't want people to see me with this. And as a femme, I don't want this to detract from my desirability. And I've really just tried to work in the fact that like, this is who I am. Like, this is who you're hiring. This is who you're booking, because you're going to meet me and I'm going to be this. Like, I am going to info dump. I am going to be weird. I'm going to make weird noises. I have to have music playing during appointments because there's just so many sensory aspects of an appointment that I need to have a handle on. And I always want to be authentic in that. And because it also makes other people who are disabled, autistic, who maybe feel like I'm too weird to book a provider, like I'm too nervous. I want them to know that like, we're not all like vixens, we're not all like I am a weird person and I can't get on top. Like I am not your typical provider.
Do you have any clients that are disabled?
I do. I have several clients that are disabled. Unfortunately, because of my own disabilities, there are certain people with disabilities I can't see because they do need somebody that can do more of the work. And that unfortunately is not me. And I never like telling them that it can't be me because people feel comfortable with the way I present myself. But I do have other disabled clients. And it's very nice because one of my longest term clients who I freaking adore, there will be times where I'm pulling up on the bus to New York and I'm like, I am so sick. I feel like shit. I need to eat as soon as I get there. Like we'll get to whatever we're going to get to, but like I need to eat. We need to chill out. I maybe need to smoke a little bit.
Yeah.
And he's always like, that's cool. That's fine. Yeah. Or, like I have health issues that are not 1-2 days, they're either lifelong, months long, weeks long. And sometimes they interfere with my bookings. So it's nice to have other disabled clients to be like, hey, can we maybe do this another day? Can we maybe shift our expectations of what's going to happen today because of this? And it's very nice to have them be supportive. Not everyone is supportive. I'm going to be honest. It's not all shiny rainbows. Some people are not nice. But for the most part, it's pretty good.
I would say more than half of my clients are autistic.
Wow.
So there are so many of us. There are so many of us. And it's like once you're diagnosed, I feel like, obviously it's hard not to project onto people when you see yourself in their actions. You want to be like, but so many people are autistic, especially because the spectrum is wide. Not everybody is. I'm obviously not the typical idea of what an autistic person is. I'm sure there are many people that would say because I can sit here and do this interview with you, that makes me like not autistic.
Right.
But there's so many people out there.
And I feel like one of the things that like, it's interesting because we're talking to you about like how being a sex worker is accessible to you as an autistic person. I also feel like there's a lot of ways in which like the service of sex work is like really great for autistic clients too, because
Absolutely.
a lot of them are coming, like my experience is that a lot of them are coming for like different reasons than what the like neurotypical clients are coming for. And they're like more like, I'm trying to figure out how to like have this sort of interaction so that I could take it somewhere else, or like a lot of the what you're talking about with your pro submission work is really similar, I think, because you have people who are coming to you who are like, I want to experience this. I want to learn about this.
Education.
And it's like it takes on this role of like, it's half sex work in the way that we think of it and half like sex education too.
Absolutely. And not everybody is going to run their business that way. I completely respect people who are like, I am here to get the job done and out. I am not here for any emotional support at all. And you know what? Cool. Like that. Yeah. But like you said, like there are a lot of people who come to me who are, and I personally am one of these people. Like I have sex workers that I've hired, some that I would like to hire, because there's things I want to experience. And as an autistic person, I am very scared to do them for the first time and do it wrong, have somebody like look at me and know that I'm doing it wrong. There's so much fear about being wrong about it, like not doing it right. And the other person will know. They'll know you're not doing it right, and or you'll make it bad in some way. And sometimes you just need like hands-on experience. I personally right now, I'm seeking out a sex worker to like give me hands-on in-person like anal with a strap-on experience, because
that's amazing. Yeah.
So many people want that. I have never done that. I'm not about to try it out for the first time on a client.
Right.
And I want to know what it looks like. I want to know what it's supposed to like sound like. I want to know like what I need to see with my eyes. And like, I love classes where people teach stuff, but nobody is putting a dick in an ass in a class, you know? They're like teaching you how to spank and stuff, and that's great. Yeah. But for a lot of people, you need to see it in person happening in front of you. And that, I mean, that goes for so many things in my life. I've always been a learner like that.
Yeah. So where can people find you and your work?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Twitter, I'm Honey Daniels. Instagram, I am Little Honey Pot. I have a print shop that's sort of like sex work adjacent. It's mainly like kink, fetish focused, that is Slug Baby Wears. You can also find me on Instagram under that, which I think is fun because I really think it's great work to like put in an in-call if that's the kind of work you do, or, you know, in your cam space. It's like, it's sexy art. It's fun.
Yeah. PJ just bought something from you.
Yeah, I saw it. He showed me a print.
Yeah.
Oh
so he's putting it up in his office. Yeah.
That's so exciting. Yeah, I love that because I think it's fun. It's like, I don't see a lot of like sex work that isn't like political. Yeah. And you don't always want like political sex work art. You know, sometimes you just want people like flatioing each other.
I love it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
This is a really important issue to me, and part of it is because like disability itself has touched me so like closely in terms of like having kids with disabilities, and then also having a husband who was like very, very sick, and the fact that like sex work for me was the only way that I like knew how to like survive financially, but also take care of the people in my life that needed to be taken care of. And while I can't claim like a disability, I can say that like disability has like impacted my life, and sex work is the thing that made my life like manageable and possible. So I have so much love for like disabled sex workers, and such like an innate understanding of like why this industry is a place that
you can thrive,
that you can
survive
and survive. Yeah.
I think the one piece I would love for you to elaborate on this, because of your experience with disability and sex work specifically, was that you had the sex work community really come to your aid in those moments and help you guys, which from a lot of communities, and I maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but like a lot of communities claim that is a part of their, you know, code of conduct or their ethics or their what is supposed to be happening, but you don't really see it.
Yeah, I mean, I should say that, like, so for those of you who don't know my story, like, my husband had testicular cancer twice. And the second time that he had it, it was a very long and drawn out thing, many months of chemo, a really intense surgery where he was hospitalized for a long period of time. And we also have 3 kids. So like juggling 3 kids and like his illness, it meant that I was the only provider. I had a sick husband, and I was also taking care of 3 kids. And one of our friends, who is an industry friend, right when he was re-diagnosed with cancer, without even asking us, like set up a GoFundMe for us and just started like disseminating it. We didn't ask for that. It wasn't something we asked for. And the community raised $7,000 so that like I didn't have to work for the months where it was really particularly bad.
Yeah.
And and it wasn't just the community. I want to also emphasize the fact that it was the community, but I want to emphasize the fact that it was both other sex workers made up the majority of it, but it's other sex workers. It was my like porn fans. It was my phone sex clients, and it was Peep Show podcast fans. And so it was like a mixture of fans and colleagues and other sex workers who like decided to like that valued us enough or understood what we were going through enough to be like, just don't work. Like we've got you. And there's something about sex work that I've seen that over and over again. And I know that like, because I had that experience, whenever I see other sex workers who are going through something similar, it's interesting. Another sex worker recently said that she has cancer and is going through treatment. And I said to her like, hey, can I send you some money? And she's like, well, I'm not really collecting money for that. And I was like, well, but I know there's going to be times that you're not going to have to work, and I want to pay it forward because other people held us up. And it's not a handout. It's I am paying this forward because other sex workers gave me money when I needed it. And she's like, oh, okay, well then, that I want to participate in that then. And, hopefully, when she gets through this, there's going to be a time when she's up and she gives money to other like sex workers who are struggling. And to me, like, PJ and I have often talked about this, that like we've never felt more held than we did by the sex work community when we were going through that. And I know that both of us will like forever feel grateful for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that kind of echoes what we should see more of in terms of like the sex work community as a whole could really rally and highlight disabled sex workers and like we've discussed in some of the interviews, like make more content with disabled sex workers, make them a part of the norm in our community so that they get the visibility that they need to help thrive and survive in sex work in a more balanced kind of ecosystem, because it's just not. And that it's a very overrepresented part of sex workers, but it's also still hardly seen almost, So I think we can do that as a community because we are so good at coming together when we really want to.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I think there's something about the ebb and flow of sex work. I think that, I think there's a couple things. I wanted to say there's something about the ebb and flow where like there are some months when I'm really high and there's some months when I'm not so high, when I'm actually pretty low. And that's true of like almost all the sex workers that I know. And then also like, nobody else is helping us. Like there is nobody else. It's just us. And I think that we know that. And that became especially true during the pandemic when sex workers were excluded from the small business, like loans that the government was giving out and everything. And then also like, because there's so many people with disabilities, it seems like we're particularly situated to understand that we have to help each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I struggled to find, I suppose, like a business takeaway from this episode for the fact that one, I'm not disabled. And also because I know that I am certainly someone who's put out content on business that hasn't spoken to disabled sex workers or neurodivergent sex workers. So my takeaway from this episode, and I know this might not be of value to the listeners the way some of the other episodes will be in terms of business, but is that I really want to shift some focus on SexWorkCEO to speak to our intersectional sex work community, because that's definitely something I'm aware now has been missing. So
no,
this
that's
lesson's
so
for me.
No. I mean, we all want to learn together. This is what we're talking about, like community, and we're a part of that community.
Absolutely.
And when we started this, like we're not painting ourselves as like the experts on things, like we're trying to have as many if we thought we were the experts, we would just talk to each other. Like,
True.
But we don't know everything. So that's, I'm really, really grateful for the people who like are coming and teaching us things as well. So
absolutely. We hope you feel the same.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of On the Horizon, a podcast about what's on the horizon for sex workers and how to navigate it. I'm Jessie Sage, and you can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual and at jessiesage.com.
And I am MelRose Michaels, and you can find me at MelRose Michaels on social and at melrosemichaels.com.
Remember, if you want bonus footage from today's episode, you can always subscribe to us on Anchor for $9.99 a month to access all the footage we couldn't include on today's show.